Okay, I've got a confession to make. I'm not actually training much anymore. But wait, because over the past few months, I've seen more development to my strength and my upper body muscles than ever before. See, I've been going to the gym since 2020. And like most guys, my goals for my upper body have always been very, very simple. Big shoulders, big biceps, a V-shaped muscular back, and the kind of upper body which makes t-shirts look tight on my arms, slim on my chest, and loose on my stomach. And since going down to no more than 3 to 4 hours per week in the gym compared to the 10 plus, yes, 10 that I was doing beforehand, I'm seeing that more now than ever before. Because training your upper body actually just means doing less, which will end up meaning that you do more of the right stuff. So if I had to go back to the drawing board, start all over again, with the main goal being build my upper body as much as humanly possible, and everything I'm about to cover in this video is going to be absolutely pointless if you do not actually listen out for the very last point, because it is the most important one. This is exactly what I would do. Starting off, we have start doing 2 working sets instead of 3. Now, traditionally speaking, it's very common that you'll see people do 3 sets of 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 reps, whatever it may be. And there's nothing majorly wrong with that. However, if I was to say to you, you've got £100 to spend over the next 3 days, and then I said, actually instead, you've only got 2 days to spend it, are you probably going to get more out of that money in 48 hours compared to 72? Yes, you will. And it's the same with doing 2 sets instead of 3 in the gym. Because I don't know about you, but quite commonly when I've got to that 3rd set, can't really be bothered. It's because I have actually pushed those first 2 sets pretty hard, and I end up just over fatiguing myself by the end of the 3rd set. With 2 sets, you are focusing more on quality over quantity. And the number 2 is please stop ruining yourself on compound movements. Now, compound movements are essentially just lifts or exercises which require multiple muscle groups. Deadlifts, bench press, bent over row, any of those bigger movements. Now, of course, I'm not saying don't do them at all. However, one of the biggest mistakes that I've made in the past, and what I know other people make as well with training their upper body, is that they go in and they do those movements first, and they spend 50, 60, 70% of their whole session duration just doing that one movement. And I'm not gonna lie, you're not actually getting as much out of it because you're fatiguing your muscles, you're fatiguing your effort levels instead of actually focusing on isolation movements, which are things like, instead of shoulder presses, lateral raise, getting more out of those specific isolation movements instead of just thinking I need to do the bigger massive movements to get more muscle is actually going to help you a lot. So recently I have been creating a free resource to give to you guys here on YouTube, and that is the 10-week free coaching Bible. Free being the very, very sexy special word. I've put together a full coaching program that you can use, which is not only going to develop your training, develop your knowledge of training, but it's also going to develop your knowledge of nutrition for the cost of zero, of zilch. Essentially, all you're going to do is you're going to click on the link down in the description below. You're going to put in your email, and it's going to be right in your emails straight away. All there for you. It is quite literally full coaching for 10 weeks for absolutely nothing. In the description below, you've got a lot to gain. Anyways, back to the video. And then number 3 is something that you've probably heard already, and I'm going to repeat it again. You need to be going to true mechanical failure. See, one of the biggest common mistakes, especially training upper body, that I've made in the past and that I know other people make, is that you get to that 7th or 8th rep and you start to feel the burn, the godforsaken burn, and you just stop. Because there's part of your brain which thinks, oh, well, I'm feeling the burn, so that must mean that I've got the most out of the rep, because if I'm feeling the burn, that means that my muscles are getting worked, and that's great. Not really, because all that's happening when you begin to feel the burn is you're actually just now entering the stage where you're actually going to be stimulating muscle growth. So see, when you get to that point where you begin to feel the actual burn, I'm sorry to say that's actually where you need to keep going, because people think that they're training to failure. I couldn't have got any more reps out of that. You've probably actually still got a lot of reps left in the tank. You cannot just stop at that point where you feel the burn. You have to actually push through it. Number 4 is finding the sweet spot between not resting enough and then resting too much. There seems to be 1 or 2 camps. Camp number 1 is that you'll finish a set and then about 25 seconds later you'll just start doing another set because potentially you just want to get the session over and done with. And then on the other camp, you've got the people who will do a set, then sit on their phone for 5-6 minutes, do the next set, and then they complain and wonder why their gym sessions last an hour and 45 minutes. Now, usually speaking, you only are realistically going to need about 90 seconds to 2 minutes for most movements, especially with your current training, because linking it to the last point, don't get offended when I say, you're probably not training hard enough to require more rest. So right now, I want you to be training here. You might not be there yet in regards to intensity. You might be here. If you were training up here, then you might take 2.5 minutes rest. Right now, you're only training here. You will get there at one point, but right now, if you're here, why not reduce that rest time to 90 seconds? Actually time it. Because see, when you actually time your rest periods and you go in to do your second set or whatever set it may be, you're going to realize, oh my God, that literally went like that. And your sessions will get shorter. You will get more out of those sessions because you're condensing more quality into a shorter time frame, like the 100 pounds in 2 days instead of 3 analogy, and you will actually get more out of your sessions. Number 5 is using warm-up sets and primers. Now, primers are essentially movements which you would generally do at the beginning of a session, which will warm up the desired muscle groups for whatever that session may be. That could be if you're going in to do a lower session, which is going to be a bit more glute focused, then you could do a movement like a seated hamstring curl at the very start of your session. Something which is going to essentially tell your muscles to wake up and be like, hey, you're going to be getting trained today, so you might want to get yourself warmed up a little bit before we move in. Then when you go into the actual main movements themselves, don't just go straight to your working set. So your working set are the ones which you would track. So whether or not you're using a logbook or you're just putting it on your notes, if you've got chest press 2 sets of 10, your working sets are those 2 sets of 10. However, you don't want those 2 sets to be the only sets of chest press that you do, because you want to have 1 to 2 sets before it, which are your warm-up sets. Now, the reason for this is not to over fatigue yourself, because that isn't what you should actually be doing. It is essentially finding the sweet spot between warming your muscles up for the working sets without over fatiguing them. So I would always generally say about 20 to 30% less weight than your working set should be what your warm-up set is. Next up is you need to start focusing on the eccentric and pausing in the stretch position. Now, studies have shown that in upper body movements, the eccentric is actually where you can potentially stimulate more muscle growth. Now, the eccentric is literally just when your muscle is lengthening. When you're doing a chest press and you push the weight forward, when you're bringing your arms back towards you, that is the eccentric. When you're doing a lateral raise and you brought the dumbbells up, when you're bringing your arm back down to your side, that is the eccentric. The part that I have just described as the eccentric is usually the part where you just let your arms go. You've done the chest press, you pushed it, usually people just let it go. And that's because people just think that the push, essentially the explosive part of the movement, is where you're stimulating muscle growth. Now, of course, that part of the movement is important, but you're actually getting even more in the eccentric. So what I want you to start thinking about doing is in all of those kind of movements and whatever other ones you're doing, in the explosive part, do it as you're already doing. But when you are returning back to the starting position, slow it down for 2 to 3 seconds. Number 7 is another terminology you've probably heard of before, and that is good old progressive overload, but it's something I'm going to have to say again because, again, it's still something that is not used often enough. Now, over the last few points, we've covered how to get more out of your individual reps, how to get more out of your individual sets. But now on a more larger, longer term scale of session to session, week to week, month to month, year to year even, how do you actually progress? Because again, one of the biggest issues, especially with upper body, is you just do the same weights week after week after week. I'm doing 3 sets of 10 reps on this movement this week from upper body. Okay, what did you do last week? That. The week before? That again. Right. Simply just going to the gym and lifting weights is not going to stimulate muscle growth, especially not to the point that you want. You have to progressive overload. Now, how do you do it? Well, there's a lot of ways in which you can do it. First of all, this is all taken into account the fact that you are actually lifting with quality, because nobody wants to be just seeing their weights go up every single week, but they're lifting as shit. Well, first of all, you look at the most obvious ones, which are, can you get a heavier weight? Can you get an extra rep? If you can do one of those, great. What can you also do? Better form. We've already spoken about better eccentrics, better pausing in the stretch. That is also progressive overload. Now, your muscle is not going, oh, we're only going to grow if we start lifting heavier. That's not how it works. It goes off of the amount of essentially stress that you're causing the muscle to be under. You can also look at things like intensifiers, which are using things like drop sets. So when you get to that second set, you potentially do a little mini third set. If you're doing a bicep curl and you've done 2 sets of 10 reps on 10 kilograms, maybe when you get to the end of that second set, you drop the weight down to 4 to 6 kilograms and you go again. Because the thing with drop sets is that when you get to the end of your second main set, if you are doing the 2 sets as I've spoken about, you've not actually fully fatigued your muscle, you've just fatigued your muscle at that weight. However, you've probably still got more juice in the tank, more juice left in the muscle, you just haven't eked out yet. And you want to think about intensifiers the same as you would think about the end of a toothpaste tube, and you've got that little bit left in. Now, you can't squeeze it out, so what do? You start rolling the packet up, you're eking out the very last of it. That is literally all you're doing here. Okay, so into the final one, and this is the unfortunate one that will hold more people back. And it's actually just sticking at it. See, I look at strength training like a slot machine. When you go to an arcade and you put your coin in and you wait until the coins come together and they come out and you get your prizes. Well, I think about strength training like that, because generally speaking, when you start off or you go back to it after a while off, you get that instant reward. You put your coin in, you get the coins come out, PBs, you're feeling good, you're looking different, you're looking better, but then you stop getting that instant reward as much, because strength training is not about instant rewards. And it's in those moments there where your motivation potentially drops and you're not getting the instant rewards that you potentially were earlier on. That's where most people give up. But that's where the gold is, the next part there. Because strength training is one of those things, you're going to have the random session where you weren't feeling motivated for it, and you're going to come out the gym and you're going to feel like a god. You're going to have that pump in your arms, you're going to be looking, you're going to see a bicep vein, you're going to see a cap shoulders, you're going to see your chest looking bigger, your back looking muscular, and you're going to be like, oh my god. But you will never get there if you just give up when your motivation drops. That age-old saying, the juice is always worth the squeeze. You can stick at it for a good few months, doing everything that I've spoken about in this video so far. Your upper body, and to be fair, your general muscle development across your whole body, well, thank you very, very much for it. I hope that you've taken a lot away from this video today, because look, training upper body and building an upper body, I'm pretty sure for most guys, is an absolute necessity and number one. And doing these things here will help you get there. I hope that you've taken a lot away from this video today, and I'll speak to you very soon.